The world is facing a climate emergency. The Earth's temperature has already increased by 1 degree Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This is causing severe impacts on water supplies, biodiversity, oceans, food production, and extreme climatic events. At the Paris Climate Conference in December 2015, 195 countries reached the first truly global agreement to control greenhouse gas emissions and face the impacts of climate change. The countries agreed to hold temperature increase to well below 2 degrees Celsius and to make efforts to stay well below 1.5 degrees. The emission reductions goals the countries presented so far will allow for global average temperature increase of at least 2.7 degrees, with potentially catastrophic impacts. The new global agreement includes new national targets for 2025 or 2030 for most countries. In 2018 and every 5 years thereafter, there will be a review of what it has been achieved by then, along with future targets. The withdrawal of the United States from the Paris Agreement in June 2017 will undoubtedly increase global challenges. A climate movement is building around the world and being led by different actors from business, civil society, governments, and international organizations, all demanding climate justice and greater actions for a low-carbon future and a safe climate. The Paris Climate Conference also acknowledges the risks for indigenous populations around the world.
Ensure that Indigenous people's rights and knowledge are integrated into climate change actions. Government should implement the references, the decisions they have agreed to in Paris in the Conference of Parties last year. They have preambular paragraph 8, which says that governments in taking of actions on climate change should respect the rights of indigenous peoples. They had also references to the importance of traditional knowledge under the adaptation chapter of the decisions. So I think for this to be ensured, they just have to implement what is contained in the decisions in Paris, which means that number one, they should recognize the rights of indigenous peoples to their lands and territories and resources. And number two, they should recognize the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples in sustaining the ecosystems where they live in, because up to now, the evidence will show that most of the ecosystems which remain, like forest, marine resources, these are ecosystems where the indigenous peoples have lived since time immemorial. And so that is evidence enough to show that if governments support the indigenous peoples in continuing to practice their traditional knowledge and develop it even further, then there will be a big chance that the governments can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions they are emitting, as well as to achieve food production sustainably, because those are the two objectives of the Climate Change Convention.
Things happening on the land that are very disturbing.
Some of our lakes have become unswimmable. Some of our well water has become undrinkable.
Elders can't predict a lot of the weather patterns or what is known in our traditional ecological knowledge.
It's affecting the maple, it affects the trees, some of the birds are not even flying south anymore.
The medicines that we used to be able to find We can't find them anymore.
We know that the animals are going to suffer. And if the animals suffer and the land suffers, we're going to suffer.
Communities are slipping into the ocean in the Arctic, or their houses are literally sinking into the permafrost. And it feels like the only people that are being whoa, 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 what are you doing? Have been Indigenous communities calling for an end to these things. Transition needs to happen now. We need to stop doing what we've been doing and begin something new. That's where this idea of Indigenous climate action has really come from. This idea that Indigenous peoples aren't just the first to be impacted, but can be the first people to provide solutions that are grounded in more than just economic solutions.
Our old people designed a system where everybody got fed, everybody had a house, everybody was involved in the culture, and when they were old, everyone got looked after. And year after year, generation after generation, decade after decade, millennia after millennia, young Aboriginal people saw the wisdom in that system and supported it and replicated it. We're destroying the earth, destroying the planet. And this is the way forward. What Aboriginal people did is exportable. A system that's exportable to the world. A lot of people think that's far too romantic, but it can be done in a very pragmatic way. How come in a country with 100 cooking shows that we don't know the name of that grain? We don't know the recipe for it. It's why are we resisting this information? Because it's Aboriginal? Because it makes us feel guilty about having taken the land from people growing these fabulous foods? Well, get over it. Do what John Howard said, get over it. And learn that there's a lot of benefit in Aboriginal intelligence and Aboriginal production of food. It's specific to this country. It defies your intelligence not to want to use that, but it needs that kind of approach where black and white come together, and white might say to black, look, we are sorry, not just for the stolen generation, but we are sorry for the damage we've done to the land and how much we've taken from you. We're now going to do something about it, and we're going to do it together. Now, black and white together.
In April 2018, I approached a local bushcare group to know more about their projects. I decided to explore the story of the Gully to shape the narrative of this documentary from global to local. The Gully is located in Katoomba, in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales. It is an area of stunning wild beauty and with a very sad story of the past. Before the European settlement, the traditional owners of the Gully, the Darug and Gundungara people, used the area and its abundance of water, plants and wildlife for their summer camps. They used the Gully for thousands of years, until in 1946 they were forcibly removed from the area to make room for the creation of a motor racetrack, as desired by a group of 83 local businessmen, members of the Blue Mountain Sporting Drivers Club, supported by the Blue Mountain City Council. After years of activism and pressure from Aboriginal organisations, in 2002 the Gully was declared an Aboriginal place, and the site now represents an example of ecological management of natural resources and a hope for the future of our planet.
In 1957, the council approved the construction of the Catalina racetrack, and that resulted in the eviction of the Aboriginal people from the site, but it also caused significant environmental damage when they bulldozed the racetracks through the bushland and through the swamps. In the process, they also bulldozed the settlement that occurred in this area.
There was the whites and the blacks that lived here. They was all battlers, and they all got on pretty well together.
I suppose because the racetrack hurt them so much and their families that some people never came back. but they never stopped having their connection back into the gully.
This is what this is all about. It's about getting the community wanting to tell the true story of the place and actually opening people's eyes to the values that are in these areas.
For our people, the Gundungurra people, it was a summer camp. So we would come up here in summer and go back down to the Burragarang in winter. What's here is springs, and you never run out of water. And it's really fresh water. Because of the swamps, you have the right environment for food sources. So you could gather, hunt and live here quite well.
To me, this project isn't just about revigorating the environment and caring for the swamp. It's about caring for people and giving people the connection to country and being able to them to pass on that connection to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren and also to the wider public, and getting the wider public involved in caring for environment and country.
We're just continuing what our ancestors did, look after our land. So it's about the people from the gully literally being the people who have a voice in the gully. Our people can actually make proper decisions on what it is with Blue Mountain City Council.
Council has a co-management agreement with the gully traditional owners so that any decisions that are made in the management of this place are made in consultation with the gully traditional owners.